One, two, three. Hey, welcome to my new channel.
Toddy Boya.
Now, we live in a time of sequels. You can look across the top 50 highest grossing films of all time, and only one doesn't have a sequel or a sequel in the making. And here it is coming at number 4, it's 1997's Titanic. Titanic is considered one of the most beloved films of all time. It was written, directed, and produced by James Cameron, and it was the first film to ever make over $1 billion. It held the title of being the highest grossing film of all time for 12 years. And the techniques used in it were considered revolutionary, and to this day they blow a lot of films out of the water. Okay, so if you've read the title, you know there's a Titanic 2. Now, technically, legally, this is not Titanic 2. It is not a sequel to Titanic. Neither of the production companies or James Cameron were involved in any way. The film does not feature Leonardo DiCaprio being unfrozen after 100 years under the ice. But later on in the video, I am going to explain why exactly this is a sequel to Titanic, no matter what they say. To make myself clear though, this film is Titanic 2, like that is the title. This film is by a company called The Asylum. You may not have heard of them before, but you've probably heard of their work. They specialize in a style of film called mockbusters. Mockbuster is a film created to exploit the publicity of another major motion picture. It's not mocking the films per se, it's more just kind of ripping them off, I guess? And The Asylum has made tons of this style of film. For example, in 2009, instead of doing Transformers, they made Transmorphers. Or as another example, they made Paranormal Entity instead of Paranormal Activity. Their most well-known work is probably the Sharknado franchise, which is not ripping off anything. They've also done shows like Z Nation and things like that. Most recently, they were in the news. They're going to be making a film called Meth Gator to capitalize on the success of Cocaine Bear. Now, Titanic 2 came out in 2010, which was a long time after the Titanic 1997 release, and an even longer time after the ship sunk. So you may think it's a bit weird that they'd choose this to make a film about. But you know what came out in December of 2009? That's right, the highest grossing film of all time, Avatar, which is also made by James Cameron. It seems that they thought it'd be easier to make a low-budget version of Titanic than it would be Avatar. Anyway, we're just gonna run through the entire plot now. If you want to watch this for yourself, it's actually free to watch on YouTube, as well as on Tubi, if you have Tubi in your country. Anyway. So the film opens with a beautiful snowy landscape and a beautiful man putting on a wetsuit. Now, why could this man be possibly putting on a wetsuit in the freezing cold? Well, let me tell you, it's not what you think. A man is going surfing. Now, why wouldn't you go surfing in Australia, for example? Well, that's because why surf at a nice warm beach when you could surf in the freezing cold off waves caused by a glacier? Now, this guy is absolutely stoked about his life decisions. I don't think this is how waves work. I'm pretty sure they need a break on something. Anyway, the dude is completely stoked with his life choices. That's until he's suddenly not anymore. A chunk of ice falls off the glacier. You can tell that it's too big of an ice chunk because the guy is visibly concerned. You wouldn't be able to tell otherwise, if I'm being honest. How the hell am I meant to know how big that chunk of ice is, other than the fact he looks visibly concerned? The surfer guy, I assume, dies here. I think he's dead. He never comes back, and he's never spoken of. The Coast Guard here gets a call. This guy's name is something. He gets a phone call about big waves or big ice. So he's got to take off in this alarmingly fake helicopter. The helicopter itself in shots actually looks good. It's just when a real human's standing next to it does it look kind of garbage. Anyway, there's this amazing transition here from helicopter to water to, here it is, the Titanic 2. So that's actually how they've gotten away with calling this film Titanic 2. It's not a sequel to James Cameron's 1997 Titanic. The boat is a sequel to the original boat. It's in no reference to the movie. There are definitely references to the original film in this, but we'll get to that later. Here you can see people clapping as they used to do for old ships. That's the thing people used to do when you went on a cruise. Your family and stuff would gather around the sides and clap, and they'd throw streamers and stuff at you, as the boat went. They don't do it anymore because that's a bit dull. If the Titanic really did have a real life sequel, the boat, if they made a new boat, I reckon it would bring a bigger crowd than this. Like, I'd show up. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, the idea of making another Titanic, like boat, not film, if you think the idea of remaking the Titanic is a dumb, stupid idea, well, you're a dumb, stupid idiot and you're wrong. But also, you're right. An Australian billionaire named Clive Palmer has been trying to get the Titanic 2 made for years. Funnily enough, he announced his project in 2012, so 2 years after this film was made. It's meant to be an accurate recreation of the original Titanic, but with modern safety capabilities. Shit was meant to be finished in 2016, but that date has been pushed back several times, and now there is no launch date in sight. So if you think this sounds like a bit of a dumb premise, you're wrong and you're an idiot, but you are correct, because it hasn't been done. Anyway, finally, we get introduced to our main characters. And this is the shot they used to do that. It's not even done tastefully in a whoopsie, that was an accident kind of way. Now, she bumps into this guy here. Take note of his face. He's gonna come back later. This is a very important character. Anyway, here we're introduced to our two main characters, Amy and Kelly. Well, two of them. There's another main character coming right up. He's flying in on a helicopter. This guy, he's a cool dude. He's freaking sick. He walks in with 4 girlfriends. 4. I cannot get one. This man has 4. The camera, again, is just really glued on these women's... It's on him. Anyway, this stud. In the movie, his name is Hayden Walsh. But in real life, the actor's name is Shane Van Dyke, who is the grandson of the great Dick Van Dyke, who you may know from his performance on The Masked Singer.
Oh my god!
Not only is Shane Van Dyke starring in this film, he also directed it. And he also wrote it. This man wrote himself into the film as a playboy billionaire. He not only owns this ship, he also designed the ship. Now, the two main women that we saw before, Kelly loves this guy. She wants her best friend here to introduce her to him because she's so in love with him. And Amy is his ex-girlfriend, who he has hired to be a nurse on the ship. They're both nurses, these two. So far, every woman shown on screen who is not an extra is in love with this guy. In the next scene, 2 strange women just walk up to him and they ask for his autograph. If I wrote and directed something though, I feel like I would also make myself the most attractive man on the world. I think I just would have done it a little more subtly, but that's cool.
So big.
Airplanes are big, babe. Trains are big. This is monumental.
Did you catch the innuendo there? Did you catch that? It was subtle, but it was there. Anyway, Coast Guard guy and Amy call, and it turns out that he's her father. So that's how these two plot lines are gonna mesh here. It's just worth noting that the Coast Guard guy says that the ship barely passed its safety inspections, and it's barely seaworthy. What the heck? You think with the Titanic 2, you would have every precaution in place so it would not sink. What the hell are they doing? This guy's Dwayne. There's a lot of people in this film who just kind of show up for a scene and introduce themselves, and then they die later on the film. It's just to show them so they can die. Anyway, Dwayne's probably the best out of all of them. He seems like a nice guy. It's worth noting here that you see that when Shane Van Dyke has left the elevator, he's only got 1, 2, 3 girlfriends with him. What happened to number 4? Where did she go? And let me tell you, it's never explained and she never shows up again. For the rest of the film, Shane Van Dyke is missing a girlfriend. It's alright, I guess there's 3 more where that came from, and like every other woman on the ship. Seeing all the people on the Titanic, it makes me think, there's something I've noticed about the extras on the Titanic. To get aboard the Titanic 2, this would have been so expensive. Like, this by far would be the most expensive cruise to go on the planet. This would just be the richest bastards across the planet who were on this thing. I hate to bring up that Rick and Morty episode, but there would be so many cosplayers, dude. Everyone would be in period clothing. It'd be like 50% cosplayers and like 50% really rich people. This Titanic 2 is seeming a bit unrealistic. I'm not saying that everyone on this boat looks poor, by the way. It's just they look normal. So here the film says that the Titanic 2 is the fastest, most sophisticated ship.
The greatest, fastest,
most sophisticated ship ever created, the Titanic 2.
Just ignoring what that guy said earlier in the film about how it's not. Even if we didn't have that scene, the fastest, most sophisticated ship, what the hell are they talking about? Do you know how many ships there are in the world? Is it faster than a speedboat? Huh? I'm sure the, like, American military has some kind of super fast boat. You know? A more sophisticated boat. Most sophisticated ship? What about a spaceship? Spaceship, the most sophisticated ship. Anyway, he gives a speech to, like, a crowd of 30 people. It looks like they got a class of kids together, you know, and they're sitting around the teacher. That's the captain. Remember him. He'll look real sad later in this film. You're not a very good captain. Now, we get shots of people walking around the ship. There is a shot of kids here, okay? There's a shot of kids. These are the only kids you see the entire film. But it does make a point that there are kids on the ship, and we're gonna jump to this point later on. We're coming back to all this. So the crowd has the most bored waving on the planet. These guys are sick of it. They're ready for the ship to leave. And in just a crazy display, as the Titanic heads off, fireworks are going off, jets are flying over. That would have cost so much for just such a small crowd. This part of the film here confuses me a little bit. I don't really know what the Coast Guard's job is, but I'm pretty sure it's not to fly to Greenland and, like, look at ice melting. But anyway, that's what they're doing. They go to Greenland and they meet scientist lady here and scientist fella. So science lady here brings out all the science tools and tells the Coast Guard guy about the main villain of the film.
When the temperatures warm, the balance tips. The ice begins calving and retreating.
I bet you didn't see that coming, did you? Who would have seen global warming taking a part in the Titanic 2? Not me. So she's showing him all the science stuff. He's not really understanding, so she goes, let me show you. And this is the big reveal.
Of course, there's no such thing as global warming, right?
You want to tell me what the hell I'm looking at?
Yesterday's collapse.
So, I have no idea what I'm looking at here. Is that just me? I have no idea what she's trying to show him here. She's trying to show him the absence of ice. I don't know. I don't know what that means for me. I don't know what that... I don't know. It's like me going, look at how much spaghetti I ate today. Oh my god. Look how far I ran today.
You want to tell me what the hell I'm looking at?
You know, it's not saying anything. Is she showing the ice or the absence of ice? Because, yeah, there's a lot of ice. Is that good or bad? Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, they also are using all these measurements of ice that I don't understand.
The piece of ice that broke off this glacier was about the size of Manhattan. Imagine what a piece the size of Rhode Island would do.
Like, as an Australian, I have no idea how to measure a Manhattan Island-sized piece of ice to a Rhode Island-sized piece of ice. Like, neither of those are measurements. Could I Google it? Yeah. Should I have to? Nah. Bloody tell me in meters, mate, alright? So Shane Van Dyke and Amy keep running into each other all over this ship. As a reminder, they're ex-lovers. And there still seems to be some tension here. He wasn't feeling the relationship because her father's overbearing, and she wasn't feeling it because he was becoming a rich CEO billionaire instead of joining the Coast Guard. I don't know, man. If you ask me, I think they still got feelings for each other. You know what I'm saying? Now, back on the ice, she's explaining that if this ice breaks off, it's gonna cause shockwaves throughout the Atlantic, and it's gonna cause, like, a tsunami-like event. Meanwhile, the other scientist dude is collecting snow samples? I don't know, mate. I feel like it's too late for snow samples, and it's time to, I don't know, measure ice instead of collect snow. Now, it's worth noting that around him, it does look like it's grass coming out, which would imply that he is on dirt. But the next moment, the ice starts to break, and the ice just swallows up our mate here. Absolutely just slurps this guy up, dude. And look, I get this bloke's old, but run a bit faster, you know? Like, this feels important. I know it's hard to run on snow, but go, man. Anyway, they get out of there on the helicopter in just the nick of time. But they are almost caught by the wave. That's right, the wave is so big it almost catches them. Now, here they explain the tsunami logic. If you're, okay, If you're a boat in the ocean, a tsunami's not going to hit you because it breaks on land. All right? Unlike the waves earlier in the film, tsunamis like break on land. So the tsunami will just pass under a boat, right? Tsunamis don't start out in the middle of the ocean big. They get big when they come to land, okay? But what they do is push objects that are underneath the water. And what is underneath the water? Majority of an iceberg. Everyone knows that fact that like 80% of an iceberg is underwater. Everyone knows that from Five Nights at Freddy's lore, obviously. So they say, stay away from icebergs, which is like, no shit.
To make it clear, they need to stay away from icebergs because the tsunami can push things that are underwater but not things on top of the water like a boat.
So Coast Guard guy calls in a submarine to keep an eye on the Titanic too. And then the submarine guy says,
Let's get this cigar smoking.
what the hell cigar you freaking talking about, dude? You're just watching a boat. Dude, me when I go see the Mario film.
Let's get this cigar smoking.
The Titanic 2 captain has been told at this point about the incoming tsunami wave. He gives word to Dwayne, who gives word to Shane Van Dyke. In a reaction that can only be related to George Bush finding out about the Twin Towers. So then they warn the passengers in this ridiculous dialogue.
Could all of the passengers aboard Titanic 2 please exit these doors right here?
Like, all passengers aboard the Titanic 2. Yes, so just everyone who can hear you currently. Maybe that's in it so we, the audience, know that she's not talking to us. Maybe? Like, maybe she's saying it so that we, the audience, don't evacuate and we keep watching the film. Just in case there was any confusion there. Yeah, sure. These guys just have the dumbest conversation with Coast Guard guy. Like, everyone here sounds freaking ridiculous.
James, I know looks can be deceiving, but can I remind you this is Titanic 2?
Yeah, you hear about Titanic 1, mate. It's bloody gone. She sunk.
This ship is equipped with state-of-the-art ice detectors that'll sound if we get within 500 yards of an ice cube.
It'll detect an ice cube? What does that mean, man? What does that mean? Also, I guarantee she won't.
This wave is clocking in at 843 miles per hour. Now, 500 yards isn't going to make a damn bit of difference.
Bro, can these people please just use metric? I don't know what any of this is, man. Can they just have one Australian guy on this boat who just says everything in metric for me, please?
Can I remind you that these engines have not been thoroughly broken in yet?
She's built for speed. She can handle it.
She's built for speed. No, she wasn't, man. She was not built for speed. She was built to be a replica of the Titanic. She was built to carry guests. No part of the reasoning that the Titanic sunk had anything to do with it being slow. Why would this one be built for speed? Oh boy, here she comes. Oh, here she comes. I do admit, the iceberg coming flying towards the ship is truly kind of a thrilling thing. I'm not gonna lie, I love it. Everyone just sounds like an idiot in this scene. And they choose to like sound the alarms. What are you doing? So they have no knowledge that an iceberg is going to hit them, by the way. We know, because we're watching a film called Titanic 2, but they have no way of knowing. So they sound the alarms, and everyone on the ship's freaking out. People keep slipping over on the floor in this one specific spot. There's about 4 or 5 scenes where someone slips over in this one spot. That nearby submarine, by the way, that just got introduced, well, if you're emotionally attached to that submarine, do I have bad news for you?
Dive! Sir, there's no it!
Somehow, a submarine, which, to make very clear, is submersible, as in it goes under the water, gets hit by the iceberg. I know an iceberg is mostly under the water, but just go down, mate. Just send the bloody submarine down. And also, left and right, man. Left and right. Pick a direction. Rest in peace to the fallen soldiers. Rest in peace. So now, the iceberg is about to hit the ship. Spoilers, it does hit the ship. Before it does, everyone here in the crew is looking out a window and see the iceberg. What's something you notice about this scene? The blinds are shut, dude. You can't see anything, alright? You're not fooling me. Hold on. Now, because of the angle that the iceberg hit them, which is not a natural angle that would ever happen, and it's only this freak tsunami event that caused this, half the lifeboats are out of commission. So now everyone is starting to have a real bad time and they're freaking out. And that's when this guy comes in with just a real snide remark that was not necessary.
Looks like history's repeating itself.
Like, what the heck, dude? Yeah, no shit. Like, now's not the time, man. Get it together. We all understand the irony of the situation. We all know about the original Titanic. Now, Dwayne tries to evacuate Shane Van Dyke using the helicopter that we saw earlier in the film. And Shane Van Dyke has a decision to make. Put injured people on the helicopter and fly them to safety, or does he fly to safety himself? And he has this really long, slow motion decision to think about it, and he decides, put injured people on the helicopter and I'm gonna stay here. So the helicopter takes off with injured people. Shane Van Dyke sticks around. So not only is he really sexy, but he's also a freaking hero. So now the scientists are warned of another incoming mega tsunami. Another chunk of ice is going to break off, even bigger than the first, causing even more icebergs to be launched. But this kind of got me thinking, with all these tsunamis, is the Titanic really our priority here? Like, wouldn't the more interesting film be, I don't know, wherever the hell the tsunami hits? Not only is one tsunami gonna hit, but one tsunami and then a mega tsunami. We never see the impact of the tsunami, by the way. We only see what's happening aboard Titanic 2. So they're loading people into the elevators with their life jackets on. Things are getting a little crazy. Women and children are going first, by the way. So that's another reason you don't see any more children in the film, because they've all been evacuated onto the lifeboats. And everyone's freaking out, but everyone is being quite orderly. Amy even manages to push through the crowd with an injured person. Also, if this is an emergency, why the hell are people taking the elevator? That's like 101 emergency. Do not use the elevator. Do not use elevator in emergency. But hey, the cruise ship crew knows best, so they load people into the elevators. And again, by all means, people are being quite orderly here. Except for this one dude, who is the asshole who pushed Kelly earlier in the film. He's back, and he's easily recognizable because he is not wearing a life jacket. So as people are getting evacuated, they're getting launched out in these lifeboats. Here's what the lifeboats look like. Mate, that's not a lifeboat. That's a freaking submarine, dude. That's a freaking spaceship.
Spaceship, the most sophisticated ship.
These are the most sophisticated lifeboats of all time. I'm sure any one of these lifeboats is going to have an amazing time throughout the rest of the film. Nothing bad's going to happen to them because they're in such a sophisticated looking lifeboat. So here a guy falls on top of Amy, and then Shane Van Dyke treats him like he's the biggest dick on the planet. You know, it was an accident, dude. You know, let it go. So Amy and Shane Van Dyke go off to find Kelly, who hasn't come up for rescue yet. Then this asshole guy just jumps out again and starts attacking Shane.
It's all your fault!
What's wrong with you? Get off of him!
Like, yeah, man, you are right. It is his fault. Now's not the time.
I suggest you worry about more important things and get on a lifeboat and save yourself.
So they find Amy, and she's been crushed under a science machine. But she is alive. So they're in the medical center, right? Or the nurse's office, at least, okay? And Amy is on the floor, and she is bleeding out. What would you think is the best choice of action here? How would you stitch up this wound? Do you A, get disinfected? Do you B, stitch it up? C, do you bandage it up? Or D, ask Shane for his credit card so you can tape it to the wound? I am by no means a medical professional, but what they do in this scene is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. They are in a medical facility, and the best thing that they can find to bandage up a wound is a credit card and tape. And not like medical tape. This is regular ass tape. It's falling off by the end of the scene. Like, a credit card doesn't get a seal on it. I can literally see bandages in the cabinet, dude. Use those. They've just got the last of the people in the elevator, except this one guy who still doesn't have a life jacket on. And for some reason, they don't let him in.
Let me in!
Like, I get he's a dick, you know, but you just killed this man. You fully just killed him because he was a bit of an asshole when things started going really wrong. You gotta let him onto a lifeboat, man. I get he's not wearing a life jacket, but There's no roof on the lifeboats. They don't need the life jacket. He's been there since the beginning. Since everyone lined up, this guy was there. He's the captain looking just like the most miserable guy you've ever seen in your life. With this guy, you can really tell he's channeling like a very real sadness going on here, you know? That's not movie sad. That's like a legitimate depression this guy is experiencing. Now, you remember how I said nothing possibly wrong can ever happen in a lifeboat. Well,
The lifeboats are death traps.
the lifeboats are death traps? Lifeboat. It's not a death boat, mate. It's a lifeboat. Anyway, I'd much rather be on one of the lifeboats. And like, because this guy is like an old man in a movie, he is correct, okay? But he shouldn't be, because the next shot in the film shows this. The Titanic explodes. He's probably feeling like a real idiot now. Imagine just finishing up saying that the lifeboats are death traps, and then suddenly the boat that they're all trying to get away from explodes. And this explosion, like, wipes out most of the named characters. Like, the captain explodes here. Dwayne goes out literally punching the explosion. What a freaking hero, dude. It's the next morning. We're gonna keep doing the video. I put on the same clothes so the transition is easy as possible. Now, while the boat is exploding, the helicopter is doing a mid-air refueling with a plane, which I didn't know was a thing, but it apparently is. That's pretty sweet. But while they're mid-air refueling, tragedy strikes. This wave is so big that it's touching the freaking stratosphere. I don't understand how this was such a big concern. Just go up, dude. You were a helicopter and a plane. That's all they do, is go up and go down at the end. So yeah, the wave hits the plane, and naturally, the plane just freaking explodes. The helicopter makes it over just in time, thankfully saving, you know, the other half of the named cast. Again, earlier in the film, they talked about how waves work. Like how tsunami waves work. This is not how they work. Why did they bother explaining how tidal waves work if they're not going to follow their own rules? So far from this tidal wave, if you're in a submarine, helicopter, or plane, or boat, you are not safe. The only way to be safe is to be on land, because the movie never goes there and shows the effects of the tsunami. Anyway, remember what we said earlier about elevators, and that you should never use an elevator in an emergency? Well, guess who got stuck in an elevator? The father and the daughter talk again. He warns her, stay the hell away from the lifeboats.
Stay away from the lifeboats. Just stay out of the lifeboats.
As if that's an option now. She's trapped in an elevator, dude. So the best chance they have is to get scuba gear. That's the best shot currently, apparently. They climb up the elevator shaft. Why the hell these ladies are climbing up the elevator shaft in their high heel shoes? I have no idea. That seems like quite the predicament you've put yourself in. The boat's going down, love. Just ditch the shoes. It's alright. Also, what's really interesting to me is that we keep seeing shots of how much of a tilt this boat is on. Except wherever the cast is standing, like the main cast, the boat is perfectly straight. Like, you could not tell this thing was sinking. Also, fun fact about this elevator shaft scene. If it looks a little weird, which, you know, it does, it's because they couldn't actually get an elevator shaft to shoot in, so they built one. But they built it on its side, so the actors would just crawl across it. Which is pretty smart, and on my first watching, I did not really realize that that's what they had done. So now the cast is in a predicament. There's a big metal door in front of them, and the only way for them to get through is Shane Van Dyke has to keep it open with his axe. As Amy's going through the door, she gets stuck, and then Kelly kind of just pushes her through the rest of it. Shane can't hold the door open anymore, and it gives in, and Kelly is crushed. Again, for the second time this film. This is the last time she'll be crushed, though, except under the water pressure, for when the boat sinks. She is dead. Anyway, there's some slow motion running as Shane Van Dyke and Amy make their way through the halls. They come across this puddle with an electric wire in it, and they've got to parkour their way over. This scene takes so long, and it feels like such low stakes. Like, the boat is sinking, dude, and they're worried about this puddle. I get it. If they step in it, they'll be electrocuted, but just make it more interesting. Make it more exciting. This film is really pushing the fact that Shane is a big, strong hero man who can do anything. It's a really weird message this film is sending. Like, Shane Van Dyke is such a big, strong hero billionaire, you know, and Amy is just a useless nurse. Anyway, they make it to the dive suits, and unfortunately, there's only one dive suit. Who saw this coming? And now, the second wave arrives. If you were watching this and you can't see anything, you're not alone, because I have no idea what the hell happens in this scene. And what you can see here, and it's so easy to miss, is all the lifeboats exploding. So yes, the movie has gone out of its way to say that all the women and children aboard the boat blew up. I bet Coast Guard guy's feeling real good about himself right now.
Barely.
Anyway, our two surviving heroes hide in the locker, and they get locked in, they stuck in there. Now, this is the part that I believe is like a direct homage to the original film Titanic. Now, I haven't seen the original Titanic, but I have just had the realization that I was so excited about the prospect of Titanic 2, that I forgot I hadn't watched the first Titanic. Anyway, at the end of the original Titanic, there's a floating bit of debris, and Leonardo DiCaprio puts Kate Winslet on it. There's not enough room for him, so he dies in the ocean. He freezes to death. There's always been a lot of debate over this, whether or not they both could have fit on there. In my personal opinion, if you think that they both could have survived, I think you're a big dummy. Like, sure, there's physically enough room for both of them, but it's floating in the ocean. That's not how buoyancy works. They're both gonna fall in. It's too risky. Anyway, so there's only one dive suit. They quickly put the wetsuit on Amy, and honestly, in this part, I think the logic is pretty sound. So essentially, as the boat's filling up with water, his reasoning is he's freezing to death. If she gives him the wetsuit, he is going to run out of oxygen anyway. But if she shares the oxygen with him, he's just going to freeze to death. So either way, he's going to die or she's going to die. So you can see that they're trying to do the same kind of ending as Titanic, except in this case, there's kind of no room for debate among the audience. Like, this is pretty clear cut. One of them lives and one dies. And, like, you can't argue that this is directly referencing the original Titanic. It's a real clever way they've got around being a sequel without being a sequel. So the dude has such a genius plan. He claims that he can drown, and because the ocean temperature is so cold, he'll be, like, kind of preserved, and they can resuscitate him when they're rescued. Because they are getting rescued, because look who's suiting up. That's right, the old man is suiting right up. He's gonna dive in there and go and save him. Now, remember earlier in the film how they needed to refuel the helicopter? Well, they didn't get enough fuel, and the helicopter is going down. The lady scientist jumps to safety, but for some reason the helicopter pilot, instead of doing like a kind of slow controlled descent into the ocean, dude just freaking just crashes. There is no slow descent for this guy. He's just, oh, I'm out of fuel. See ya. Anyway, the old man goes in, finds them. He apparently is stronger than the two of them combined because he moves this crate with some ease. So he saves them, brings them out, puts them in the lifeboat, and then they resuscitate Shane Van Dyke and live happily ever after. I'm just kidding. He's dead. That's right, Shane Van Dyke, fully dead. And then just like that, the film ends. So the only people who survived Titanic 2 were Amy and the people that Shane Van Dyke got out on the helicopter. Now, did I think this film was really bad? Yes. Did I enjoy it? Yeah, I freaking loved it. I honestly really enjoyed watching this. I had so much fun with it. And like, I just watched it by myself. I imagine watching it with like a group of friends would be fantastic. Also, it just looked like a really fun shoot to be on. I watched some of the behind the scenes and it just seems like a really good time here. Everyone's having fun. It seems like a real community vibe. Thanks for watching my first video, guys. I really enjoyed making this. This was fun. Expect more content like this on the channel, but maybe not so awkward. This was kind of a learning experience making this video, so I know what I would do better next time. If you like this kind of content and me looking at bad movies, make sure you subscribe. I'd really appreciate that. My next video is probably going to be another bad movie, but this next one's genuinely bad. Like, I did not enjoy watching it. But on this channel, we're not just gonna watch bad movies, we'll do other stuff. We might look at some reality shows or something. Maybe some TikToks. So if you have anything you want me to look at, make sure to send it over. And yeah, subscribe. Thank you. Sorry again that this video was kind of awkward. Yeah.